This is the Core Confidence Life podcast with Dennis R. Sumlin.
Welcome to the Core Confidence Life Personal Development Podcast. I am your host, Dennis, from the sinking ship we call New York City. If you want to get in touch with me rather easily, you can send an email to dennis@coreconfidencelife.com. That's dennis@coreconfidencelife.com. And of course, visit the website coreconfidencelife.com. If you visit that website, you'll see all kinds of things having to do with astrology, numerology, and self-discovery. Some of the things you'll find on there is the Life Path Math Numerology course. Now, at the time that I'm recording this, we have already begun the Life Path Math course, but you can certainly take a look and keep track to see when we open level 2 of the Life Path Math course. You can also go to the website to get your astro chart done, get your core numbers to your numerology chart done, do synastry matchings and all other things, as well as articles and things like that. And we're just chock full of stuff. Plus, of course, find the archives to this podcast. We've been around for a while. You've missed a few things if you've just joined us. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, and everywhere else as well. Well, on today's program, we are talking about numerology. And hey, no surprise, it's a numerology podcast along with other metaphysical phenomena. So yes, we're talking about numerology. And when we talk about numerology, we know that we talk about your life path. We talk about your destiny expression, which is the full sum of your name at birth. And when we do numerology, we're used to counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So we're using the 9 base numbers of 1 to 9. Well, what would happen if we had more than the base numbers 0 to 9? What happens if we had more than that? I don't know. For those of you who are computer nerds, you know about the binary code, the code of ones and zeros, 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 1. Well, in numerology, there is something called base 12, and it's not just on numerology. You can count in base 12, you can count in base 13, you can count in base 74, whatever. But base 12 numerology takes the practice of numerology even deeper, takes the analyzations even deeper. So, for example, in standard numerology, I am a life path number 2. But in base 12 numerology, I am a life path number 9. Oh, how did that happen? Well, on today's program, we're going to see how that happens. We're talking to Michael Smith. He is the author of the book, Base 12 Numerology. We're going to speak to him and find out a little bit about how he got into numerology and what the hell is base 12? What the hell is base 12 numerology? And how is that differ from your standard numerology chart? You think you know your life path number now. Oh, boy, you don't know your life path number now until you do base 12. So we're going to bring that right to you right after this.
I'm Demetrius Angelis, but most people call me Jim. On Sunday, June 8, 2008, I was arrested and charged with the murder of my wife and mother of our 2 young children, whom I was divorcing after she had attempted to abduct our 3-year-old son with his passport with the help of her extramarital lover, Ali. On October 30th, 2010, a jury found me guilty of murder, despite no definitive cause of death and the bleeding penis inflicted by my wife. But was it really murder, or was it something else? Follow my family's journey through softcover, hardcover, Kindle, or audiobook to find out the whole story, and you be the judge. For more information about my book, The Ottawa Way, Guilty by Gender in Canada's Capital, Visit jimangelis.com. JIMANGELIS.com.
What's going on, Michael?
Oh, I'm doing great, Dennis. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
No
Looking
problem.
forward to it.
I was excited, like, oh, look at this. I'm, because I've been a numerologist for a while. This is my business and all this. And I come across this. What is this? I was looking for, numerology tricks that I didn't know about yet.
Sure.
And I came across this. So tell us a little bit about who you are. Let's start off that way.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Michael Smith. I'm live in Canada, just north of Toronto, and I'm a numerologist, specifically in base 12, and we'll get to that. And also a psychic medium and author of a couple of books related to base 12. Yeah, and that's sort of where I am now. I'll sort of probably I'll jump right in on give a little bit of a background how the heck I got into numerology in the first place. Because actually I was a mechanical engineer in manufacturing for about 30 years and a statistician. So I was a total numbers guy, and I had no spiritual beliefs, wasn't interested in anything woo-woo like numerology at the time. And so not for me. It was all about something I could count, measure, and grease. That's about it. So it's, so over the course of that time, I started with a wide-eyed engineer, getting into quality and, how we can make production go better. And I sort of specialized in process improvement and lean manufacturing. It was sort of like getting efficiencies and improving things. But really over the course of towards the end of the 30 years, my job became more and more mercenary, to be quite honest, because I was sort of a lean manufacturing specialist. Instead of doing process controls, it was eliminating processes, it was downsizing labor, and in several cases, it was closing entire plants. So my whole career trajectory really caused a lot of stress to me personally. It wasn't really what I got into, but that's just sort of my, the synchronicity over time, the jobs I ended up in, led me to that point. And then during that same time, had some major personal crises that sort of got me, emotionally a mess. And that was a couple of brothers of mine over the course of the last, within about a 4-year stretch of each other, they both had untimely deaths, and unfortunately by their own hand. And growing up in a British Canadian household, we didn't really process grief. We didn't talk about it. So it's, I was a bit of a pressure cooker of this real dissatisfaction with my job, real unresolved grief with my two brothers. And then in about the last few years before sort of the catalyst, when I got into numerology, I started getting bouts of back-to-back pneumonia and dangerously high blood pressure. So I was just emotionally, physically, and spiritually a mess, to be honest. And then in the summer of 2014, coincidentally, when you started your new business, I was woken up out of a dead sleep by one of my brothers calling my name, one of my brothers who had passed. I got up like it's, your logical mind says, no, that can't be, but it was so clear, and I just knew it was him. So I didn't know what to make of it. Then later in that week, I started getting a lot of clairvoyant images, little messages from other friends and family in spirit. I started getting little premonitions of things that would happen a few days later. So my whole worldview was turned upside down. And again, I had no spiritual beliefs really at all. So it's, I thought I was having a midlife crisis. But what also happened at the very same time was it's like a switch was flipped that, I just knew I couldn't do the work I was doing anymore. It's just, I'd sit in the garage in the car and just sit there for 5 minutes idling, and I just couldn't go to work. It's just, I knew it didn't fit anymore. So I ended up quitting my job. And right after that, all my health issues went away. My blood pressure dropped. I got out of that sense of funk. And what it also triggered was a sudden fascination with numerology and with base 12. And it was almost like within that month, I had no use for numerology before. I said, no numbers, you just count with them and you pay bills with them. but then it's like not just a knowing, it's almost like a remembering, which you might be able to relate to, where it's, you get some sort of spiritual aha and you say, oh yeah, this makes sense. I've been here before. And so I dove into numerology, everything I could get about it. But the more I looked at it, and also looking in astrology and other things, I saw almost all spiritual systems followed the base 12 cycle. Astrology is a classic example, and it's super accurate because of that. And spiritual beliefs and 12 disciples and 12 Greek gods, and the whole system. There's been an ancient intuition about 12, and and in our society, and how I grew up in my engineering career, it's all about base 10. It's counting the decimal system. So the more I looked, I ended up, to make a long story short, I ended up finding this pattern in when you graph a base 12 cycle as a vibration over time, but you just graph the positions that make prime numbers, it ends up creating the DNA double helix. So basically that figure 8 pattern. And when I looked at the pattern, I suddenly realized on the 12, the 12 positions, every position exactly matched what the ancient definition of numerology was. The 0 potential, 1 of new beginnings, 2 of duality, 6 of love, 9 of completion. But what it also convinced me is that, there is also a place for the 10 and the 11. Like 11 in Pythagorean numerology, base 10, 11 is usually a master number. It's after a cycle of 10, it's that first master number on the other side. But here it sort of showed that, no, 11 is the, a 10 is it's like after you do a physical completion, you've accomplished something. 10 is that point of awareness where you reflect on it. What did I learn? And the 11 of the illumination is getting clarity about why did I experience that in the first place. So it sort of made it all sort of the pieces fell into place, and suddenly realized that numerology is both a base 10 cycle. It's a physical cycle from 1 to 9, where you go through those steps and you achieve physical completion at 9. But it's also a spiritual cycle, which includes the 10 and the 11, that higher vibrational perspective. So I started doing numerology both ways, of base 10 and base 12, for myself, for family, for friends, famous celebrities, where I knew what their life story would be. And I found amazing parallels between it. And basically what it seemed to be was the base 10 cycle was, as far as life path of our purpose from our birth date, and our expression and destiny number, basically our calling from our birth name. These were in base 10. This is how we physically show up in the world. So base 10 numerology, as you know, is super accurate in showing exactly how we show up and what our calling and our talents and, and the sort of experiences we have. A base 12 sort of puts it extra. It seems to be the spiritual layer beneath is, okay, here's the life path we had, the purpose, but here's the fundamental things beneath it, what that purpose is. And same with our expression or destiny number, our calling. Here's what we physically have as far as a career and a vocation that we have talents in. But in base 12, here's what that calling, that underlying calling is on a spiritual level. What are you really learning? So really that's sort of, a totally unexpected way of getting into it. I went from a total numbers guy, total physical perspective, to basically seeing that, numerology is legitimate after all. And once I saw that vibrational pattern, it's in astrology terms, I'm a Aquarius sun sign, Aquarius moon, and a Scorpio ascendant, which means, I need to understand how things work, but I'm completely stubborn about not letting it go until I do. So it's sort of like that complement of the logical left brain, but the spiritual and abstract right brain trying to make sense of this thing. So really, when the pieces fell into place, it's something that, as you know, numerology's never really had a visual picture or a roadmap, like astrology does. Astrology is fantastic. It's got all the, the signs and the houses, how the planets align and transit through it. You've got this perfect snapshot. But numerology has always really been, a list of themes. It hasn't had this geometric picture. And that's really what that vibrational pattern gave me. And, and from that point on, I haven't looked back.
Oh, all right. Well, that's quite a evolutionary journey Now,
Yeah.
here's something. Now, I know that you looked at base 12 because you saw the patterns in the other sets of 12, like astrology and things like that.
Right.
But base 12 isn't the only different system than base 10. You know, you can have base 13, base 28. So did you try out other base counting systems? You just went straight to base 12.
I went to straight. Well, it's sort of two answers to that. I went straight to base 12, but because of my math background, I knew a lot about the other base systems. Base 10, if you compare those two, well, first of all, starting the simplest is binary code, zeros and ones, like we program a computer. You just have two states. Super simple, and to me, the vibration of numbers, it's got to make sense to nature. How would nature most efficiently and with versatility manifest reality? So it can't be as simple as just, on and off, light and dark in binary. When you get to base 10, it's a lot more complexity possible. But really, when you're looking at how many ways you can divide a base 10 cycle, you can either divide it in halves or fifths or tenths. So that's really it. So it's very limited as far as a number system in itself. When you look at base 12, that's the next even numbered system up. You get not only divided in half and thirds and quarters, but in sixths and in twelfths. So what's called in math, you have 5 ways of factoring a base 12 cycle. Basically, there's that much more versatility in base 12 as a pure number system than in base 10, which only has 3 ways. So to make a long story short, that's sort of I jumped right to base 12 because I knew mathematically and the science of it was that it's the most efficient but still very compact system that nature would logically choose. So that's sort of the excellent question. That's sort of how I dialed into why base 10 made sense. And also I had a bit of, a side interest in physics and other things. So they've only found base 12 particles quantum particles within quantum physics. Snowflakes show up in 12s. The lunar cycle dictates the 12 months of the year, again, tied to astrology. So there's all this evidence in nature that it's predisposed to show up in 12s. And I believe ultimately, and what I feel intuitively is that everything emerges from consciousness. We're consciousness. That's why astrology and numerology work. We vibrationally resonate with those number themes. And the same thing with a birth date. It's a number theme that we chose before we incarnated to cherry pick certain themes that we wanted to explore. And same with a birth name. It's not just mom and dad. We had a big part of that and getting that on intuitively influencing that choice of a name. Where we think it's really them, but it's all consciousness in the background, and it's really a team effort, I believe. So that's sort of how I dial into base 12.
Well, nice. So you mean to tell me now, since I was born on the 11th, you're taking away my birth date master number?
Actually, it's very interesting. Your birthday, of the 11th, December the 11th, instead of a master 11, it's actually the 11 of illumination. So it's basically the highest, it's the completion of the illumination cycle. So basically that's the highest vibration you can have in base 12. Really, all the master numbers, to me, they're higher octaves. So in base 12, it's a cycle of 12 plus 1. We'd call them 13 base 10, but it's really it's a dozen plus another 1. So that's the master number 11. And then master 22, mastery of structure, is 2 cycles of 12 plus another 2. So it's still hyper elevated your birthday, but it's that completion of that illumination cycle. And I'll walk through your numbers both in base 10 and 12 to show how that relates. So, no, I'm not taking anything away. I'm actually, I would say, enhancing it because it really makes sense on the flow of your numbers.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So just for people who are not fluent in numerology, and especially this base 12, if it's not, can you walk us through the meanings from, I guess, 0 to 11, especially 10 and 11, because that would be new to many of us, considering them as a single digit.
For sure. Yeah. So in traditional Pythagorean, Western, base 10 numerology, the standard system, again, that cycle, that's the base 10 cycle from 0 to 9. And the 0 represents potential. Nothing's been manifested. You haven't started anything yet. 1 is how you first show up, or you take initiative. It's a new beginning. It's leadership. It's independence. So it's all about that 1, about that standing on your own 2 feet. And the number 2 is the 2 of duality. That represents contrast. That represents relationship. That represents comparing yourself to your environment, yourself to someone else, yourself to circumstances. So that's what the 2 is all about. And then the 2 brings us to the 3 of the catalyst, which is a very creative number. It's a highly influential number. It's cause and effect. It's, are we an influencer, or are we a victim and influenced? So it's got that whole range to it. And before I go on, again, it's important to highlight for folks new to numerology is every number is a vibration. So it has a full range of expression from positive to negative. And again, it's not in spiritual and consciousness terms, there is no good or bad. It's simply positive and negative. It's a range of expression. So even when we think we're going through our biggest challenges, there's a reason we're experiencing that. It's enhancing our soul, our soul's learning in some respect. So that's an important distinction, is that it's vibrational and we're meant to experience contrast, or else there is no vibration. So it has to have that up and down amplitude. So from the 3, we go to the 4, which is all about structure and stability, safety, security. It's that grounded energy. Basically, you see that flow from the 3 of, a lot of action and influence and creation. And the 4 is our yearning for stability, for a sense of home. And then 5, after we've had that stability and status quo, we always have a yearning for change. And that's what the 5 represents. It's about change, action, courage, exploration. And when we have that momentum, we have that trust in ourselves to explore. That's the next step into the 6 of love. And it's quite literally, in vibrational terms, why we fall in love. It's a vibrational falling into that central core of the base 12 cycle. And geometrically and mathematically, the 6 of love is the very heart of the cycle. And again, if you relate that to astrology, that would be the sign of Cancer and the summer solstice, where it's the longest day of the year. It's the most energetic. So really, it sort of ties back all these spiritual systems into 6 of love is that creative source that we are, that we express, that we strive to share with others. Then from the 6, basically the 7 through the 11 are the spiritual counterpart of the 1 through 5. So 7 is new beginnings of truth. It's about knowledge. It's about belief. It's about having faith. And then with that faith and belief in ourselves, we go to the 8 of manifestation. And that's all about abundance, self-worth, business savvy, that sort of thing. And then from the 8, when we're manifesting, ultimately we reach the 9 of completion, of achievement. We're manifesting something with the goal of achieving things. And that's all about, not just physical completion again, as I mentioned, the end of the 0 to 9 cycle, but it's also about accepting things we can't change, accepting endings and loss, with grace. So again, it's that vibrational polarity that exists. Now we get to the 10 and the 11. So 10, there is no, in traditional base 10 numerology, 10 needs a new definition. And 11 already had one, but not as a master number. That's illumination. So basically we have that step between 9 and 11, which helped, to reconcile that in my own mind, really the 9 of physical completion. Before you can have the illumination of understanding why you had the experience, you have to have that 10 of awareness, of contemplation, of reflecting back on what you just achieved or didn't achieve. So really that's where that 10 becomes this new definition of awareness in base 12. Again, and just unique to 12. It doesn't exist in the base 10 cycle. And then finally, we get to illumination of the 11. And so when we look at this whole scene, we see from 0 of pure potential, we haven't started anything, through the 1 to 5 of new beginnings, duality, catalyst, structure, and change. These are very physical things. Then we discover that still point of love, that where everything makes sense, and now everything beyond 6, we express it through that loving, compassionate, caring perspective. And that's why 7 through 11 are really the elevated complements to the first ones. And so when you look at the cycle like that, it suddenly makes sense, like the chromatic scale of music, there's 12 notes, makes sense with the color wheel and the visible spectrum of light. All the colors add up. And when you get to the 11 of illumination, you get pure white light. You get the clarity of illumination, of understanding that whole cycle. So it's it really jives with science. And so from my logical mind, but it really jives from a spiritual sense too, is we have this journey, every encounter, every experience, every career, every lifetime is the journey from 0 to 11, where 9 is really the physical completion point, and then 10 and 11 are those extra steps of really diving into yourself and getting that inner knowledge about yourself. So that's really the distinction between base 12 and base 10. It gives that deep dive into the spiritual nature of whatever you experience.
Well, thanks for that. Now, here's a question that's a spinoff of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing base 12 and somebody's life path or a major element of their life is 10 or 11, what would be of the personality traits of a 10 or an 11 if they had it in one of those major positions?
Yeah, if you're the 10, again, it's all about it's about awareness. They'll be very perceptive, very intuitive person. They'll be very analytical. They'll want to know reasons behind things. They'll get into the nuts and bolts of things, and they'll tend to be very intellectual, in their head type people, probably to the point of being quite introverted. So that's sort of a classic 10 vibe. And the 11 is 11 of illumination. That personality type is sort of inspired, idealistic, looking to see the light in the world, the light in others, a very, very positive, optimistic view of trying to see the good in things. And it's a very inspiring type of person to be around, and quite energetic, and probably at times can't shut them up. So it's that sort of high energy type vibe. So that's sort of how those two play out in personality wise, anyway.
Right, and just we'll get to the reduction in my numbers in a minute, but I just wanted to so when you're trying to reduce numbers or put them all together, obviously October would stay 10.
Correct.
Right, but then December would be a 1.
And December?
Yeah, wouldn't that be a 1? Because it's the 12th. But if you're reducing it, then you're going to end up with 1 because it's the 12th cycle completed. So
right, and actually a good way to look at it is, so in base 10, December, the number 12 would be 1 cycle of 10 plus 2 remainder.
Yep.
So that's 1 plus 2 equals 3. So in base 12, instead of a cycle of 10 plus a reminder, it's a dozen plus a reminder worth a reminder. So 12 would be 1 cycle of 12, but you're already there. There's no extra remainder, so it's plus 0. So it's 1 plus 0 equals 1, to your point. So really, if you're doing it quick, if you're doing a reduction through base 10 to base 12, you're basically going to be knocking it down it'll end up being 2 numbers lower, typically, unless you get into master numbers in that.
Yeah, so that means December and January are 1s when you reduce them. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
whereas
no reducing January.
Whereas in base 10, October, which is 10th month, would be a 1, as well.
That's true. Instead of October being the second 1 in the year, it's December. Yeah. Okay.
and that's again where it ties into astrology, which I struggled with, because it's almost like based on numerology is a little like leaving out the last two signs of the zodiac and just saying, okay, Scorpio, you're going to be Aquarius again, or whatever it is. It's so it sort of rationalizes why that cycle of 12 sort of makes sense, but that's the math, like you say. It's exactly 12 will become one cycle 12 plus 0, which is a 1 plus 0, which is a 1. So that's the reduction happens the very same way. It's just sort of getting your noodle around counting in 12s, which is a little bizarre after a lifetime of 10s for myself included. Yeah.
When I got your book, I spent like the entire weekend trying to get that into my head. Like, okay, base 12. I looked at your videos. I looked at a bunch of other ones. I wanted to jam this into my head. I wanted to make sure I knew how to do this in base 12. And then, of course, when you talk about reducing the years, I had to wrap my mind around that formula. I'm like, okay, wow. But I think I've got it all. When I calculate, sometimes I catch mistakes because, you're just in the flow of things. You go every time you come to 9, you automatically think 10. But no, it's deck, because it has its own language. I looked at all the language of the base 12, and that 10 as a single digit, they just call it deck.
Yeah, and actually what I do in all my readings to sort of help folks, because again, we're trying to make sense of when's a 10 a double digit, and when's it a single digit, like within base 12, and when's it a double digit, as in 12 plus another, a full cycle of 12 plus 0.
Yeah.
I still show it as 10, but I underline it. Same with 11. Yep. I underline it to sort of show it, okay, when it shows up this way, it's still within that first cycle. It's treated as a single digit. And then when I show the master numbers, the true double digits, I don't underline them. So rather than deck and those, some show them as 10 as A, 11 as B.
Yep,
some show it as an upside down E and an X.
Yep. Some people show it as T and E.
Yeah, and that's some of the confusion about it. That's why it's the notation I sort of liked. No, let's get it back in terms of, it's a single digit, but when you do the math, you still have to count 10 as, 10 units. And the 11 is 11.
It helps me to think about it in that different language. So when I go, 8, 9, deck L, because they call 11 L, that actually helps me. So when I get to 19, it would just be deck-teen.
Okay, sure.
L-teen. Yeah. And then, of course, the number after 29 would be 20 deck and 20L. And then we get to 30. So knowing that language helps me understand the difference between 10 as a single digit and 10 as a double.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, it was sort of in the book. It was sort of that was more of a notation for the book to keep it straight when you're doing the math, and like you say, a good visual to keep in mind too for folks new to base 12 is just keep thinking of a clock cycle. It's sort of like in base 10 is like military time. Okay, 1700 hours is actually 5 p.m. So when we look at it in terms of clock cycles, okay, it's noon plus another 5. And that's, equivalent to 17 hours. So, even when you count, you can do a quick, okay, that's 2 laps of a clock plus another 2. Okay, that's 24 plus 2. So it's sort of that visual clock cycle in the back of your mind. And like you say, the squirreliest one is doing a year, because again, your birth year of 1977, for instance, is 1 times 1,000 plus 9 times 100, 7 times 10 plus a 7 remainder, right?
Yep.
But in base 12, you look at how many instead of how many thousands, basically 10 cubed fit in, how many 12 cubed fit in, how many 1728s.
Yep.
So that's really, so the thousands place is equivalent to 1728. So you have, yours is actually 1189. That's what 1977 is in base 12. It's 1 times 1728, 1 times 144, which is 12 times 12, 8 times 12, and plus a 9 remainder. And that's why in my book I have a lookup chart, and there's all sorts of free base 10 to base 12 converters on, just Google it. So that's the quickest way to, when it comes to years, I throw up a white flag and just look it up. And then things add again the same way. And again, it's just getting used to reducing in terms of 12s. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Okay. So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at I guess we're using my birthday as an example. Let's take a look at it in base 10 and base 12 so you can do the comparison.
Sure. So again, for your viewers, your full birth date, your month, day, year adds up to your life path. That's your purpose and the major focus in life, basically why you're here. So in your case, you were born December 11th, 1977. And the way the life path works, it's actually, we don't have this, we have this overall single life path theme, but it actually plays out in 3 stages, where your month of birth is your stage basically in youth. Your day of birth is your main working years, mid-adult, and your year of birth is, later in adulthood. And so the logic that helps me see that is basically your month of birth, why that's in youth. That's basically you're new to life, you don't have all that life experience, so you're basically, flow with the ebbs and tides of the astrological cycle. You're basically probably truest to your sun sign when you're in youth. You feel the monthly cycles directly. You go through puberty and all that nonsense. So really in youth, you're living out your life really in this monthly pattern, very much, like in nature. In your day of birth, that's when you start having to get into the details of daily life, of obligations, of family, of responsibilities. So your focus starts to micromanage to this daily frequency. And then later in adulthood, when you approach retirement, you basically chill out and you slow down to this annual cycle. It's more, things don't phase you as much anymore. The highs and lows of your astrological signs, you're more immune to them. You know yourself better. So that's sort of the thinking of that flow. So in your case, your month of birth, which would be your main theme in youth, in base 10, it's the 1 + 2 = 3. So that would be of the catalyst. And whenever I do numerology, always, if you have to reduce a number, like 2 numbers to get to that final digit, I always like to keep those 2 digits in mind. So in your case, you're 1 + 2 = 3 catalyst. You're not a 3 catalyst on your own, as if you were born, say, March. Because you were born in December, you're actually the 3 of a catalyst, but you'll experience that particularly through new beginnings of duality. So in youth, in the base 10 picture, you're all about experiencing a lot of duality and influences, both that you could control and couldn't control. And then in base 12, that 12 instead becomes 1 cycle of 12 + 0, or 1 + 0 = 1. So in base 12, your main theme you're exploring was to independently explore, which is the 1, your self-potential, which is the 1 + 0. So again, that's sort of that you're starting to see the distinction between, in base 10, it was about experiencing physical duality, contrast, conflict, balance. And in base 12, it was more about exploring your self-potential, your self-actualization. So it's sort of that deeper layer, the 12 is under the 10. Next, when we go over to your day of birth, which is basically from your mid-30s to 60 roughly, it sort of depends on your life path, but that's basically, it's your middle third of life. In base 10, it's the master 11, and in base 12, it's the single digit 11, the 11 of illumination. And really in base 10, the definition of master 11 is illumination anyway, right? So really, it's always in traditional numerology, it means the same thing. It's just in base 12, it's that highest vibration you can achieve in that full cycle. In base 10, it's you've done a full cycle and it's experiencing it something new again. And really, that's all about illumination. So it makes total sense, your path, getting deeply into astrology, numerology, really enlightening yourself, enlightening others. So you're squarely in the midst of that. So all your numbers, actually, that when I see you, what I know about you from your website and seeing some of your neat videos, you're really true to yourself. So you've really intuitively followed what you're here to do, how do you express yourself, and and what you're exploring. So that's, kudos to you. But that, again, that just means you're ready for that. And so next we go to the year of birth, and this is the third of your life, the last third of your life. So in base 10, 1977 adds up to 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 7, or 24, and 2 plus 4 equals 6. And the 6 is the theme of love. But in your case, it's experiencing love, particularly through the 2 and the 4. Love through the duality of structure. So basically finding love and peace and expressing love through both times of stability and instability. So that's sort of what, that latter part of your life, your main theme you would explore. Whereas in base 12, again, without going through the math, your 1977 equates to 1189 in base 12. And that equals 112 plus another 7, or 1 plus 7 equals 8. So in base 12, your year theme is the 1 plus 7 equals 8, the 17-8 of manifestation, but particularly through new beginnings of truth and knowledge and teaching. So it's really how do you manifest abundance through that knowledge and truth? So that's really that underlying spiritual theme of what you're here to experience. Whereas your 1977 theme of love through duality of structure, that's more how that'll physically show up in your life. But underlying it, you're actually learning about that self-worth of manifesting abundance on your own terms and doing it in a knowledgeable way, which is exactly the sort of work you're doing and will continue to do according to this. So now when we add those three together of month, day, and year, we get the life path. So first with your base 10, it's the 3 plus master 11 plus the 6, and that comes to 20 in base 10, or 2 plus 0 equals 2. So it's a 2 of duality. But again, it's particularly through experiencing duality through the duality of potential. And what that basically means is to learn about duality and contrast, about the two, but to explore the possibilities that creates. So it's a much more empowered exploration of the two rather than just my life path is a 2. It wasn't reduced from other numbers. Yours is about what are the possibilities of learning when I encounter duality. So again, that's the little signs like this come up that indicates you're an old soul, because you're taking this deeper expression of, 2 is one of the most challenging themes in numerology and in life, because it's all about finding balance when there isn't balance, finding peace when there's conflict, finding cooperation when there's disagreement. So it's although it sounds like a small number, it's a very challenging one. So in base 12, instead of duality, your life path comes to the 1 plus 11 plus 8, and that comes to 1 plus 8 equals 9. So in base 12, your life path is the 18-9, the completion of the 9 through new beginnings of manifestation of the 1 and the 8. So basically, to learn how to achieve contentment of the 9 through self-worth and manifesting abundance on your own terms. So really in base 12, it's showing that really what you're here to explore is to stand on your own 2 feet, to manifest what you want to do, but always independently on your own terms, not answering to another dictate, another person, another organization. So it's really showing that, you're exploring duality in a deep and rich way physically, but you're really exploring that underlying thing of finding abundance and contentment through your own self-worth. So that's really the comparisons there.
Hold on, before we go on, I was watching one of your videos, and you did it the way I thought it should be done here. Like, it made sense. Like, okay, 20 is not actually 20 in base 12. It's going to be 18, which is 9. When I saw your video, you were adding up your own birthday. You got to number 28 and added 2 and 8, but I didn't see you transfer 28 into 24. Why wouldn't you be a 6 life path rather than a 10?
No, again,
I missed something.
Yeah, sure, because it's a 28-10, but again, that basically says it's a 2 plus 8 equals 10. So the 10 is just the addition of the 2 and the 8. So it's that final reduction.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that when you added up your month, day, and year, you got to 28, but you did not convert it from 28 to 24. You know what I mean?
Correct. Because when I got to that, to get to the 20 part, it was actually two 12s. Okay, so it was actually 24 plus 8. If you looked at the base 10 math, it's actually, my day, month, and year of birth.
Yeah, on the base 10, I remember. I think it was 120.
Yeah, but this 2810 is my base 12, so those are already converted. So that 2 is already 2 cycles of 12, plus another 8 is 10 in 2 plus 8 in base 12. So those 2 prior digits, they're already reduced to base 12. So that's just the difference.
Because when I did it, maybe I'm glad you said that, because when I did it, I'm like, wait a minute, like if I did it the way he did it, I'm still a 2. But if I did it the way that I thought it was supposed to be done, I'm a 9. So I'm like, I got to ask, how come he's not a 6 rather than a 10?
Right.
All right.
Right. Yeah. It takes a little getting used to, but it's and also when you get when you get master numbers, because you don't reduce those, right? So you've got to take note of that when you're adding things too. But again, it's everything other than getting used to counting in 12s. Base 12 numerology is exactly the same as base 10. You've got that extra definition for the number 10 as a single digit, but all the reducing happens the same. All the numbers that are in a person's chart are identical. So it's really just the thinking in terms of 12s instead of 10s. But otherwise, numerology is numerology.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. So this means that it's possible to have an 11 or 10 challenge number, or 9, which normally doesn't happen in base 10. So how would you describe a 9, 10, or 11 challenge number?
Yeah, so in challenge, can you have opportunities or pinnacles or challenges? So basically, you have 4 of those through the course of your life for folks new to numerology. And basically, the challenges of 9 would be about completion, about not being able to complete things, not finishing what you start, not having that thoroughness, or always seeing that, the sky's falling, things are ending, rather than, I'm trying to finish something. It's, no, I lost something, I lost an opportunity. So it's sort of the negative view of endings rather than completion. So that's the 9. A challenge number of the 10 would be challenges related to awareness or lack thereof. So basically, having people not understand what you're trying to say, not understand you as a person, or you having always misunderstanding others, or trying to overanalyze things to the point beyond what they are on face value. And similarly, the 11 would be challenges of illumination. So having trouble understanding why things happen, having trouble seeing the light in the world, seeing positivity in others. So, it's 11 can also be sort of denial of there's something about yourself or about situations or about things you're trying to accomplish. It's rather than seeing the illumination clarity, it's you're shielding yourself from that. So that's often the challenge number, and it shows up in 11. It's something you're hiding from yourself. That's important for you to learn.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
It's really the same as challenge numbers. It's just whatever that 0 to 11 definitions, you just plug in the 9, 10, and 11 from that context. You just use that meaning. If it's challenge, it's, we're experiencing negative aspects. If it's an opportunity number, it's the positive aspects. If it's in your life path, it's related to your purpose. If it's in your expression number or birth name, it's related to your calling or what you're meant to do. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't mean to stop the process.
No worries.
You probably were going to go on to the pinnacles, but I just wanted to get that birthday question out because I noticed it on your videos. I'm like, okay, maybe I missed something, but he didn't seem like he could. But you explained it. So and I figured when I did it in base 12, I'm like, if I did it, I'm a 9. That actually kind of makes sense. But yeah, okay, continue.
And actually on my website, I have a blank template, so anyone can just print it right off. And it's I recommend if they're into numerology, do your numerology the base 10 way and then do the base 12, then pretty well once you do it once, you'll get the drift and say, okay, I get it. There's a 10 and 11 now. Here's what they mean, but everything works the same way. It's really just getting used to, counting in 12s. So this really brings through. Yeah, I was just really going to focus on life path, which we covered, and for time's sake, I'll just get into the expression or the destiny number.
Sure.
So really, again, as you would probably agree, those are the two main numbers in one's numerology chart, because everything in your life path, all of the cycles and so on, are derived from your birth date. So your life path, and those three growth cycles that add up to it. That's sort of that's the biggie of the time-related numbers. Whereas your expression or destiny number, which is basically your calling, who you're meant to be in this life, that's all about your birth name. And then the other half of your chart is derived from all those things, aspects of your birth name, like your personality number or the consonants in your name, your soul or heart's desire number, which is the vowels of your name, and so on. It's really the life path and expression number. It's sort of like in astrology, know your sun sign, your moon sign, and your ascendant. If you have those three, those are the three core ones to really understand yourself well. Then everything else is enhancements. And same with numerology. And in my perspective, life path and expression, since everything's derived from those two, those are the ones to really, really focus on a lot. So in your case, what do you go out? Do you call it a destiny number or expression number?
I like the word expression, but I know a lot of numerologists say destiny. So now I say expression destiny, just so people can follow me when I'm teaching.
Sure. Yeah, and I always like to, there's a bunch of lingo in traditional numerology like destiny. I'm a big believer that your chart, these are our predispositions, just like astrology. Everything's not cast in stone. We always have free will. So I try to avoid words like destiny. It's, this is fated to happen. So, no, these are the themes you're going to encounter because you're vibrationally attracting them. But there's an infinite number of ways you could experience that, from good to bad to neutral and everything in between. So with expression number, again, based on your full birth name, in base 10, your first name of Dennis comes to the 11. Master 11, and that's all about basically inquisitive and bright, intelligent. Middle name of Donnel in base 10 comes to 2 plus 8, which equals 10, which equals 1 plus 0 equals 1. So that's all about independence and being driven. And then your last name, your surname, comes to 2 plus 5 equals 7, which is basically a seeker of knowledge and truth. Then when you add those three together in base 10, you've got the master 11 plus 1 plus 7 comes to 19, and 1 plus 9 equals 10, and 1 plus 0 equals 1. So your expression number is the 1 plus 0 equals 1. So it's all about new beginnings and independence, but particularly through new beginnings of potential. So really in layman's terms, it's to be a leader or a coach, the one energy of self-empowerment of 1 plus 0, which is exactly what you're doing and what you have the talent for. So again, in base 10, you're calling, you're exactly expressing what you came here to be. So you've really intuitively connected to your path, is what this tells me. And then if we go in base 12, if we go through your three names, Dennis, instead of the 11 of illumination, it's the 2 plus 5 equals 7. So it basically says your first name is all about seeker of knowledge and truth. And what's actually interesting about this is that in base 12, I think in one of your videos, you mentioned that from a very early age, you wanted to be a teacher. And really when you look at your first name of Dennis on its own, basically it's in youth when you're typically called by just your first name. It's later in life that you're called by your first and last name or all three names once you get in the working world and we're all grown up. So really in Dennis, so that sort of caught my eye that, your name of Dennis, as it would resonate in youth, you would have picked up on that, and so would have, your parents and others. Oh yeah, he's meant to be a teacher. He has that teacher vibe. So next, Donnel in base 12 is the 2 plus 4 equals 6. So it's a very loving and caring name. And then last, your name of Sumlin is 2 + 1 = 3. So it's a 3 of the catalyst. It's influential and expressive vibe. And when you add those three together to get your expression number, 7 + 6 + 3 is one cycle of 12 + 4, which is 1 + 4 = 5. So that's all about the change of the 5 through new beginnings of structure of the 1 and the 4. So in base 12, what your best expression in your calling is to be a change agent, basically a 5, of creating stable foundations, the 1 + 4. So really it's all about empowering others with guidance and, again, the 4, the structure, the tools to create greater stability in their lives. And what also caught my eye about with actually both in base 10 and base 12, your expression numbers are odd numbers. It's the 1. It's the 1 of independence and new beginnings in base 10, and that's a masculine number. And your particular focus, your calling, is best suited to a male audience, to a male clientele. And I think that's what you specialize in, if I'm not mistaken.
I did.
Yeah.
Changed a little bit, but I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's just who people would resonate with that vibe. And it's, it's sort of a loose association, but in general, odd numbers like the 1, or in base 12, your 5 expression number, again, it's a masculine number as well. So when you look at the base 12 cycle, it's why traditionally, and this goes back to ancient numerology too, is odd numbers generally were associated with, the 1 of new beginnings and, assertiveness, the 3 of influencing things and people, the 5 of action and change and hunting for dinner, the 7 of belief or forcing a belief, and the 9 of finishing stuff. Whereas in the even numbers, they're more feminine, balanced, relationship-based base theme. The 2 of duality and balance, the 4 of structure and stability and security, the 6 of love, the 8 of manifesting and self-worth, the 10 of awareness. So that's sort of that sort of highlighted to me. Both your expression numbers, either way you look at it, are male, particularly resonate with a male energy. But again, when you look at, you're in base 10, really it's to be a leader or coach of self-empowerment. That's physically how your career specialty is, what your company is. But on a more spiritual level, your base 12 is really about empowering people with the tools to get that stability in their own lives. So it's sort of like that underlying theme, whether you're a leader or coach or whatever, that's what you're doing for people, is you're giving them the tools to be empowered on their own. So that's what I like how although I specialize in base 12, it never fails to amaze me when I do base 10, how complementary they are. And again, that's the important way to look at it, is 10. That'll tend to match what you're physically doing, what you're physically experiencing. And in base 12 will be, oh yeah, that's sort of what I feel inside. That's really what, when I look back in life, yeah, that's really what I was learning in that experience. Yeah, so those are really your 2 big numbers. Oh, another thing I wanted to point out was I did the numerology of your business name, Core Confidence Life. And that also resonates with the 9 of your base 12 life path of, basically of completion, of new beginnings, of manifestation. But your business name doesn't resonate with your base 10 vibe. So again, that's just indicative of you're on a spiritual path beyond just how you physically show up in the world. You're spiritually exploring these things. So intuitively, you probably picked up on that deeper relevance of your business name. You picked a business name that matched your spiritual life path, as opposed to your physical one, if you know what I mean. So that sort of caught my eye as well.
That's interesting. Yeah,
that's cool. Huh?
Life path is a 9. Now, Core Confidence Life, from what I calculated in base 10, it's a 7.
Correct. It's a 1 + 6 = 7.
Yep, 16, 7. So, I guess 7 and 9. Yeah.
So again, it's generally 2 numbers lower in base 12.
Yeah.
Generally, but again, it's if you have a high theme, you're going to have a pretty high theme in base 12 too. But where it gets interesting is when it gets, you get beyond 9, you get 10 and 12, base 10 jumps into the next cycle. So now you're getting to 1s and 2s again. Whereas in base 10, no, you're still on the same cycle. You're about 10 of awareness, 11 of illumination. Then you get into the others. So that's where base 12 starts to get distinctly different, is really in those higher numbers.
Yeah. A couple more things here. Well, one is an observation of, and I'll make it to you because you're doing the base 12, and it is about my chart. I did notice that my challenge numbers was 10-3-7-7, and I'm like, that 7 makes sense. Especially it's in the third position, which I think we consider that a life challenge. And that 7 makes sense. The 3 makes sense too, because of my base 10 thing is 1-4-3-3. So that makes sense to me too. But the 10-3-7-7, I see the 3 is still there. Can't escape that.
Right.
The 7 was there, like, as a challenge. So I'm like, yeah, this does speak to my inner search for myself and for truth and, trust, challenges around trust and things like that. That does fit. So
truth and integrity. Yeah. Cause that's really the, but you're showing up in the world, you have, you're really meant to be a teacher in that. And that's the 7 vibe too. And that's often, you may see this a lot in your readings too, but whatever your strong suit is and what you're really here to excel at, you often have a chart loaded with challenges of that same thing. So it's like we really try to stretch ourselves, and the things we really learn most deeply from are what we first consider our challenges or traumas or crises. But when we come through the other side, we realize, oh no, I got through that. So it's, it really is for a reason. So I see that a lot. I'll see a lot of that 7 about truth, integrity of others and self, of knowledge, of self-knowledge. So that really ties in your number. So that makes sense, because it's really, again, trying to stretch what you're here to learn deeply. If we come into the world and we excel at all the, we're a living master and we excel at all the 11 themes, then there's no learning. There's no reason to be incarnating, and which is another story. But that's when these living masters, when they get to the point of, I do believe people, when we become guides for others on the other side, when we had enough life experience, we sort of set one out or two, or become a guide in a different respect. So it really is a progression. So it's, we don't stop learning on the other side, I believe. And I see that a lot in my mediumship readings too. And is that, oh no, what we learned here, that was a catalyst for doing something even more deep in the next life, or serving as a guide for someone else. So, yeah. Oh, and another one thing I want to point out was you're in base 12, that, your expression number of the 5 of change and being a change agent, your name. And again, this is same in base 10, base 12, you have 7 5s. You may or may not be aware of that.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Your name is loaded with 5s.
Yeah.
And again, that's, in numerology lingo, that's called a hidden passion. That's basically the numbers that show up most frequently in your name is hidden passion. Those which don't show up at all are called the karmic lesson, which are basically a past life lesson or something you didn't fully learn last time around. So it shows up as something you really have to work at. But in this case, your name totally resonates with the 5 of change, of being that change agent, which again is another hint where you're actually more aligned with your base 12 expression number than your base 10 at that level, at the core name of your, the tone of your name.
That intensity number. Yep.
Yeah, and core confidence life again resonates with the 9 of your base 12 life path more so than your base 10. So again, it's where we're both these physical base 10 cycles and these more spiritually expanded base 12 cycles. But some people show up more, I want to have more of a physical experience this time, or I want to go more deeply on the spiritual side, which you and I are both doing. My numbers are very much that way too. I tend to resonate a bit more with my base 12 core numbers. So
Yeah.
very cool.
When I saw my life path 9, I'm like, that makes sense. I know that I experienced the 2 as well, but that 9 makes sense. Like really,
Yeah. So it's really sort of sitting into that, and numerology. It's like astrology too. A lot of people and myself included, when I started, it was, oh great, I did my chart, great, that's good, it's good for life. I said, oh no, it's really a living document. So when you see a life path of 9, tomorrow you experience 9 differently. Next year you'll have a different perspective about the 9 than you did when you're a child. 10 years from now, you'll really be mastering the 9 in a different way. So they really are. Every number is a living, breathing energy that we unpeel like an onion as we go. So it's I always try to encourage people, whether astrology or numerology, really keep revisiting it. Whenever you have a major life event, go back to try. Okay, this was about that timing, so this is sort of what I can expect. And if anything, it really helps you head into life optimistically and proactively, rather than stuff happening and saying, why the heck did that happen? But in numerology and astrology and other tools such as that, we get a lot of breadcrumbs that we've left for ourselves on how to really go with the flow of what we're meant to be. But your numbers really make sense for what you're doing, and
it definitely does make sense. And one more question, because this is the thing I always do this. We always talk about the achievement number in my class, and I'm always looking at transits and stuff. So I noticed that in base 12, my achievement number would be a 1, which I thought that was.
Help me out a bit. What's the achievement number in your?
Well, basically, the achievement number is the first pinnacle. It's the month plus the day.
Okay.
Yep. So you may have heard it called the approach number, the sun number.
First pinnacle is what I call it. Yeah.
Yes, it is the first pinnacle, but it's also called the achievement. And so what that does, at least in base 10 terms, is that number, because it's your first pinnacle, it's the energy you were born into, and so it's the energy that if you master that particular energy, it'll actually add to your life.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what number did it come to again?
So in base 10, I am a 5, because that's my first pinnacle in base 10. So that would be my achievement number. But in base 12, it comes out to be a 1, because it's the 1 December plus the 11, which is 12, which is 10, which is 1.
Okay. Yeah. So in base 10, you're again, and pinnacle is basically opportunities. You get favorable experiences to take advantage of that theme. So with a 5, you're getting. There were changes early on in life, because again, that's in youth when that first pinnacle occurs. So it's really get that starting push in base 10. You had basically experiences that were favorable to help you cope with change, to help you go with the flow, to help you adapt. Whereas in base 12, the 1 would be about you had favorable experiences which helped you stand on your own 2 feet, helped you take initiative, helped you be creative, helped you take the lead in things on your own terms. So again, which one of those 2 would you say resonates more?
I think both, because when I saw that, I'm like, I know that the 5 is kind of wild and it's changeable and it's unrestricted. Right. But when I saw the 1, like, that's how I was like, because I was always wondering, like, the 1 makes so much sense. It really does, because it's that drive for independence, that standing on my own, that doing what I say I want to do, that whole thing.
Right.
And it's interesting. I'm like, because that is, I got a South Node in Aries. So I'm coming out of that karma of the toxic independence. And, okay. But my first pinnacle in base 12 is a 1, which is still the sun energy, because it's Aries Leo, basically, because the sun is dignified in Leo, exalted in Aries. So the 1 packs both those energies. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. So really, if you're, what was the dominant, did you feel, I'm an independent guy, like right in youth, the first theme, if you had to characterize yourself, I'm all about independence, or is it all about flexibility and action?
I knew from an early age that I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Like, I even didn't like when the teachers called my mother, because I'm like, I'm the one that did it. Why are you calling my mother? Why don't you come deal with me?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not thinking, I mean, I was thinking, but hey, I'm 10 years old. How the hell would I tell someone to come deal with me? But that's how I thought.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
It was almost like it doesn't feel exactly this way, but it's almost as if I was born with an adult type of temperament, because I never cared about age. When things would get heated, I was the person to take that extra mile. I would jump in your face. It didn't matter if you were an adult. So It just, that one makes so much sense. Like I steamroll people to get my independence. Like, it's just like, It's uncompromising.
Yeah.
But I also feel the 5, because the 5 also relates to like no restrictions and totally autonomous. So I can definitely see that too. So, but when I saw the 1, I'm like, that's a deeper read.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, you'll take different things, and maybe later in life, you'll realize, oh, there's actually deeper 5 experiences that, okay, I get that now. And it's to your point about, makes total sense where they call that achievement number. Is that first pinnacle, like your life path, all the numbers are cumulative, all the vibrations add together, like, a musical piece. They aren't individual notes, they're like vibrational chords. And in the case of pinnacles or challenge numbers, it's interesting in traditional numerology, you don't add those up to get a master pinnacle or master challenge. But to me, you really could, is that every number is cumulative. That first experience, whether it's the 5 or the 1, you resonate with that, and you've had that experience. And I like the analogy of light, the spectrum of light, is that every color you experience, they all add up to white light, but only if you experience them all. So they truly are additive. So makes total sense, that achievement. Yeah, that sets the trajectory of your life, is that first pinnacle.
Yep, that's what it's based on. That's why.
Yeah, just like your month of birth, your first growth cycle, that sets your theme. Yeah, and that's why month is such a big deal in astrology. It really, those starting numbers really set the trajectory for the rest of your.
That's right.
Rest of your life. Yeah. Great question. Didn't look at it that way.
Yeah. So before we wind down, I just want to talk about predictions. So I know that because the first pinnacle / achievement, and we're talking base 12, is a 1. And when I look at, the universal year, obviously it's a 6 in base 10, but a 9 in base 12. And so that means I'd be in a personal year 10. But in base 10, I'm actually in a personal year 11 too. So I thought that was interesting that I would be in a personal year 11 and 10. Like, that's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And again, it's sort of like whatever, there's resonance with both approaches, and you'll be pieces of both, but you'll sort of see when it tends to be the base 12 number, okay, for some reason, whether it's a pinnacle, a challenge, a life path, you're wanting to go more deeply on that. It's not beyond just having an experience, is getting to the root of, okay, I need to sit in this. Why did I have that experience? What's that sort of teaching me? Whereas a lot of other numbers, it resonates more with base 10. It's, okay, I'm exploring that theme directly. It's showing up directly that way. So it really is helpful actually doing both. I know it's a lot of work for people, but just doing that one time, if folks are doing your own base 10 chart, I encourage you to do your base 12 just the once, and you really see really interesting insights out of it. And to your point, when we started there's all sorts of numerological systems. There's Chinese, there's Vedic, there's Chaldean from ancient Mesopotamia, which actually, instead of, it's even less numbers than base 10. They left out the 9 because it was considered too sacred.
Yep.
So they only went from 1 to 8. So it's whatever the perspective was in the time. And I think that's a bit of a sign of where we are as a society too. A lot of the original systems back to like after hieroglyphs in Egypt and ancient Greece, it was all base 10. And again, it was a very focused on, the 9 is at the end of physical completion, is the end of a cycle. Then you're seeing more things, astrology started to, it's always been relevant, but it's getting really, really popular now. Or I think people are resonating with that idea of, no, we're here to consciously explore and expand and grow and learn, not here to just achieve and have a really fulfilling life. We're actually, there's that extra layer. So it's sort of like you see over society, they went from a, base 9 like Mesopotamia to the base 10, Egypt and Greece, to base 12, where more and more people are gravitating to that. So it's a bit of the sign of the times on where we are collectively as a society, I think, and how open-minded we are. And we especially see it in the young kids today. They're so super intuitive. So a lot of kids are coming out of the chute with this real spiritual wisdom, and they're, defiantly authentic and doing their own thing. And that's a real sign of a lot of old souls coming in, and they're really expressing their truth and their authenticity. Whereas back in my generation, there were a lot of restrictions. There were a lot of, you should work at the same job for your entire career. I failed that one miserably. I moved 17 times. But anyway, it's a lot of society. It's sort of like a sign of the times. And we truly are in that age of Aquarius, where people are opening up to what's the greater truth behind things. Yeah. So, yeah, great discussion. Yeah.
Cool. Well, before we close, just tell everyone where they could find you. What's your website? How did they get your book? The whole nine.
Sure. Everything you can find through my website, which is michaelsmith12.com. And so in there's links to my books. There's lots of do-it-yourself numerology pages. There's that free template where you can print it out to do your own numerology. And again, I'm probably the worst marketer, because I'm really, it's like our interaction, where we got to know each other out of the blue here, Dennis, and it's really synchronistic. So I really encourage people to don't rely on mediums, don't rely on numerologists frequently. Really use it as a catalyst for your own growth. So really have them as coaches, have them as teachers to empower you to learn about your numbers. And that's really I've really changed my perspective on that a lot. That's why I'm gravitating a lot more to 2 books where people can do the self-study, put a lot of free stuff on my website. I still do readings, but it's not my main thing. It's mostly this knowledge is there to be shared, and your website is excellent, a ton of stuff you offer. So we're very simpatico in that sort of perspective. So it's really about empowering others to use these tools as in their own toolbox. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time to come on the program and tell us more about base 12, because I've already started looking at it and kind of looking at it, analyzing it, and applying it to charts, and I'm probably going to have it in the advanced part of my life path math course. And no, I definitely appreciate your time, and I certainly enjoyed it.
And the one thing I don't know if I emphasized enough was the real key takeaway of base 12 is that everything is centered in love. Everything is at that core energy of love. And so really, and when we look at astrology, I look at the zodiac not starting with Aries, but I see it as starting with Capricorn, the zero potential of the unseen, of the potential to be manifested, of pursuing goals. And the 6 of Cancer is the very center of that cycle. So really it follows more the energetic year to me. And that really dovetails well with that idea of that base 12 cycle. Because everything, like that figure 8 pattern that I found with the prime numbers, everything originates in love. It's made of love. It's experiencing love, and the destination is love. So really, that's sort of the key that links all of the metaphysical tools in my mind to it. Really is one perspective that's just coming at it from different angles. So it's all about love.
Well, thank you very much for showing up on the program. I really appreciate that.
No, all the best, Dennis. I really appreciate it. It's great fun talking to you.
If you'd like to be a guest on Core Confidence Life to share your talents, resources, or life lessons, just go to cclpodcast.com. That's cclpodcast.com and click on Be a Guest.